Welcome back to another edition of Roof Talk by Elite Roofing Supply. I've got some cool guys here with me today. They even wore matching uniforms. The guys from Sales Transformation Group. I've got Joe and Ryan. Welcome, guys. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks for having us.
Doing amazing.
It's good to have you, and good to talk about sales, because as we were talking about before we turned the camera on, this is not something we in the construction industry are great at. Let's just be honest. We tend to look at sales as something that we have to do, but I don't know if we develop as Ryan, as you were saying, coming into this, we don't develop that leadership piece, and we don't think as much maybe about those skills as much as we do with other things that we do. So love to chat with you guys about what you do at Sales Transformation Group and how, some tips and tricks for our contractors to get better at this. So who wants to start?
I'll kick us off.
All right, there you go.
Awesome. So, I'm Ryan Groth. Just a quick intro. I'm the founder of the company. We started this a few years back, but what we're doing and why we exist is I was a CRM implementer of a CRM company that I was the president of, that was birthed out of a need to change a commercial roofing contractor into more of a piercing into the private sector, and they wanted to grow the relationships. And they found that through some outside help, through the recession, they couldn't cut overhead anymore. They had to do something to grow their business. And the only thing they can do is sell their way out. They had to figure out how to sell. And so that helped them become really fanatically focused on serving their favorite customer, which is to be the prime contractor and deal directly with that end user, the property manager, the owner of a building that exists, that's leaking and needs to be fixed. So in their pursuit to grow their business, they evaluated their team and they realized that they got a bunch of people who just are estimators. They just estimate a job and shoot off an email, right? They just quote. And his shrink, he called him at the time, which was a third-party sales trainer, said, look, the bad news is you guys aren't sales guys. The good news is I can help you find them and develop them. And what he did starting in about 2008, and I met him in 2013, was what can he do to create a sales environment? And so when I came in 2013, it was about 5 years in. They grew from about 8 million, which was their bottom at the time through the recession, to about 25. Today, the CEO and I are still great friends. He mentored me. They're doing a little north of 70 million, all service, all re-roof. And I think about that and I'm just like, man, when I was there, I started to implement this CRM to the industry. And I saw that all these roofing contractors that I was working with didn't have a sales process. Just unlike the company I was a part of, they had a sales process. They didn't have any numbers and metrics. They didn't have a sales manager. They didn't have any accountability. They didn't have like a profile of a salesperson they want to hire. They didn't have any compensation plans to help them know how to work themselves up and through the organization. None of that was there. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're never really going to ever grow. We could follow up a little better and we can know our closing ratio. But the only way you're going to move the needle is if you start to fix these big things. So I started consulting, threw on a coaching hat. I'm a former athlete, so I just love coaching. I love people, love seeing people win. And I'm not former. We're always athletes, right?
That's right.
But I had a chapter in which I played a little bit higher competitive sports, and I started to see that this industry needed some help. And so that was 10 years ago now. It's crazy. Wow. I started this industry in 2013 in August. So next month will be 10 years of serving the industry. But I started this company a little over 5 years ago with this mission to say, hey, Sales Transformation Group, we want to transform these companies into sales organizations that happen to do commercial roofing, that happen to do residential roofing. Because I saw firsthand from my mentor what it looks like when a company has a disciplined, accountable, motivated, skilled sales team. They were able to go further in the marketplace and go deeper and work with better customers and get better jobs and make more profit and build bigger buildings and have cool stuff. And I was like, man, how cool is this? So that's what we started doing. And that's how we got this thing rolling. And that's what we're all about.
That's amazing. Joe, how do you come into play this thing?
Yeah, it's a wild story. I joined STG a year ago, and I come from way outside of, well, I won't say way outside, come from outside the roofing industry though. I was a sales leader at the the nation's #1 rated mortgage company, still a favorite place, still love everybody over there. And what I love about this and about being on this team, I'm proof that people can learn to sell, right? I joined that organization in 2017, didn't have initial success. Took me a minute to get it figured out. And, when Ryan and I are talking about, what are the kinds of things that we could do to actually transform an industry? It's to take all those things that help guide me up into a place of, accomplishing personal goals and replicate that. And to me, no different. There's no better place to look than to the leaders or the lack thereof inside of an industry to figure out how to transform people. So that's it's where I come from, the mortgage industry. But we're talking about an incredibly oiled sales machine, right?
Sure.
With awesome infrastructure laid down, amazing people that have helped guide other people up to great heights. And that's what I do every day. I just get to replicate, my favorite part of having been a sales leader, but with a couple dozen teams.
Joe gets to do that with our customers, and we get to thankfully get an opportunity to work with elites teams, some of their teams, some contractors, and Joe is one of the favorites.
That's good. But that's good. The fact, you're here at a year, and it sounds like you're going to make it at least another one based upon Ryan's review there. So we got him. Joe and I talked ahead of time to make sure he was secure in this. So
that's
yes,
right.
we're coaxing you here, Ryan.
At least good for the month.
Right. So let's talk about what maybe, because I think you guys could give us a lot of advice on what to do right. But what is being done wrong right now? Because I think there's a lot of, this is one of the few industries, and I work a lot in manufacturing and construction. So I see how lack of automation, lack of a focus can really, hurt organizations. Where do you really see the challenge is? If you were to come up with the top 5 list here, what are contractors challenged with? What is that?
I'd say one of the biggest problems is they don't track anything well. Yeah. It's terribly undermeasured. And I'm not saying I'm an advocate for measuring how everything is and how long your fingernail was on the paper before you pushed it. I'm not saying that. But what I do think is if we were to ask a contractor, what does your revenue look like over the next 90 days? Or what do you think the next year is going to look like based on your current performance and trends and seasonalities and performance of your team? They could not give you a good answer.
That's right.
Which means you have owners that are driving, blindly down the highway, not just in a car, but in a large bus with a lot of great people in their company that are following them into their livelihood. And for me, I want to see companies have the ability to know their numbers, know their sales performance, and make that a place to make truthful business decisions, real business decisions. And those conversations open up a lot of really good questions that are less emotional, less subjective, and help them make true strategic decisions into the future of their business. For example, closing ratio, selling cycle, type of job, type of customer, account revenue per account, gross margins on jobs.
Yeah.
There's so many things that if you look at patterns, you can say, whoa, if we stop doing that and just double down on that, what would happen? And when we have that information, then we can point people in the right direction. So I think that's a really key one.
I was gonna say, measuring what's important, knowing it's important, and having the patience to measure it. That's an important tactic that a sales leader would do.
So far we've talked about sales leadership and measurement of the things that that contractors aren't doing well. I'd love to dig deeper here and talk about a couple more, but I want to go back to measurement for a minute because I think so many people are afraid of measurement. And this is part of, like you said, Brian, you're like, I don't want to measure every little thing, right? But there is value in that. I got to tell you, in working with construction companies, it shocks me how many times I'll get a call from a company that's $100-200 million, and they go, look, we're killing it in sales. We're not making any money. What are we doing wrong? And we come in and almost without exception, one of the things that we find is that they aren't accurately measuring the work that's being done in the field. And their estimators are using numbers that are very, very inaccurate. They haven't been adjusted. We had one a couple of years back where, we start to look at the labor part of their calculator and we're like, this is like below minimum wage. Do you literally, they're like, no, we're paying a premium for people. Well, the calculator shows everybody makes less than minimum wage. So the reason you lose money is because you aren't accurately, you haven't put that information back into the system. So that's really important, the measurement piece.
And then what that would create is a big problem. Is you're going to have to sell deals at a higher margin, and you're going to have to overcome a price objection. That's where sales skills come in.
Yeah,
because if you think about it, I don't think any company's printing money, printing margin without salesmanship. You have to be able to sell for a little bit more than the other person for someone to be convinced that they're going to get it done right the first time with you instead of somebody else, because we're all in a competitive space. And if you want to make money and grow, you're going to need that extra margin to have money to grow, and you got to have more margin, right? So yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah. And Ryan, not to interrupt that flow, but I hear this all the time from CEOs, and they're like, I don't know why we're losing to these bums on this deal. And I'm going, because you don't realize they're not making they don't realize that they're about ready to go out of business, because their cash flow is good. They're like, oh, we win every deal that we get. We win every deal that we get. And then at the end of the year, when their accountant does the books and they say, well, how much taxes do I owe? And they're like, taxes? Dude, you lost $3 million. And they're like, no, I didn't. There's money in my bank account. And they're like, yeah, but if the cash flow all stopped for a minute and all the kids on the bus, if you slam the brakes on the bus, all the kids are going to hit the windshield, and you just don't know it. And there's a lot of businesses, unfortunately. And listen, we do this in contracting. I've worked around contractors since early 2000s. And robbing Peter to pay Paul is what we all do on the back end. And we all know that legally we're not allowed to do that, but we all do it, right? We commingle funds and we take, so you really do have to be conscientious of the fact that you've got to bring some salesmanship into this. If you win every deal that you bid on, you have done something wrong, right? Because there's always somebody out there that'll do it for cheap. And you don't want to be that guy. You want to be the person that gets the good margins, that has the loyal customers. When I was younger, I always hired the cheap guy. Now I usually go for the most expensive guy because I'm like, I've been around the cheap guy. I don't want him on my property ever again.
You're project managing him. You're asking when he's going to start and stop, and you're asking if you can clean up his job, and you're going to ask him to not eat on the job site or whatever it may be. So yeah, that's.
We do a lot of software implementations with my other company, and any software company, first question we ask is, well, how many, tell us about your PMO, tell us about your project managers, how many project managers will be assigned? And if they're like, oh, we don't do that. And I'm like, yeah, I don't care what the price is. I'm not working with you because I'm going to be calling you and they're going, oh, that didn't get taken care of. Well, no, it didn't get taken care of, you idiots. Like, you gotta actually work the system. So let's talk about other things, because we talked about measurement and how important that is. And you really do have to have good numbers, be able to feed back to your estimator. You got to make sure your pricing is appropriate. You don't want to win deals you lose money on, right? We've talked about making sure you have the right leadership in place. What are other mistakes that you see organizations in the contracting space making when it comes to their sales?
In that vein, it's still attached to leadership, but it's what are we doing? Now, Ryan and I know this too. The clients we work with, the sales leaders that spend their time appropriately and effectively, are the ones that are actually getting their sales teams rolling. And if there's one thing that every single contracting organization that sells something that's listening to this right now can do, take a look at your calendar if you are the sales leader. And if you're not spending 50% of your time daily coaching, sitting down with a teammate on a one-on-one basis, or doing group coaching, if you're not doing that, you're not doing the job. If you're not spending 33% of your time holding people accountable in some fashion, pipeline reviews, again, one-on-ones, all that stuff, you're not doing the job. Those are the two biggest components. And when you really look at most of the sales leaders we work with, they're doing some of that, and they're doing their best. That's the reality. They're doing their best, but they've also got a sales quota that they got to hit. Right?
Or they're getting pulled into operations, or they're getting pulled into something else or marketing. Right?
So I think we've hit three really good ones here. I think measurement's important, leadership's important, and time management. Like making sure you are dedicating the right amount of time to the right activities, because it's called Parkinson's law, and it says that work will always fit to the time allotted for it. It always expands to fit that time allotted for it. So if you put time on your calendar and you say, this is my sacred time for me working with my people and coaching my people, you'll do it. If you give yourself 4 hours, you'll find 4 hours. If you give yourself 15 minutes, you're only going to find 15 minutes. If you don't have it on your calendar at all, guess how much you're going to find? Yep. 0. You're never going to do it. So you got to make the time for it, and you've got to make it a priority. And listen, salespeople need that. If you look at the psychological profiles of most salespeople, they have personalities that like people to stroke them, that like people to say, you're doing a good job, man. Congratulations. We appreciate the work that you're doing here. And if you can't give that to them, they'll go someplace else and find it. And nobody wants that either.
That's another key gap. Like if you're a sales manager who's focused on a quota, on your personal quota, and on your sales team hitting theirs, you miss that boat, right? People don't show up for a paycheck. They show up for a greater purpose, a greater reason. And I don't care what industry and what we're selling. It's the truth.
Yeah, good people don't leave companies, they leave leaders.
Yep.
That's right. 100%. So you don't usually suggest to have a selling sales manager?
I can't imagine a scenario where it's a good idea, if I'm honest.
I've never seen one that was. I've never had. I actually think a sales manager competing against salespeople, just think about that for a minute. Could you imagine if the coach of your team was not aligned with the objectives of the players?
Right.
Like that doesn't even, it sounds so ridiculous when we say it out loud, but yet probably 80% of the people listening to this are going, well, if my sales manager isn't selling, who the hell is going to sell anything? Mm-hmm. Then you don't have a sales manager. You have a really good salesperson that you've just given this title to.
Totally.
Yeah. I work with some extraordinary sales leaders. The extraordinary ones that are still selling, they're not extraordinary sales leaders. They're just extraordinary people, I should say. And that's the problem. Even the most amazing salesperson, the most organized sales leader, if they have two jobs, they have two jobs. I wouldn't want a salesperson who has two jobs, right? And I certainly wouldn't want a sales leader to have two jobs, even if they're both with me. So
so Joe, that's a good point. And how do you overcome that? Because the progression in corporate America and in any job is you do the job and then eventually you become the manager. Then eventually you become the director, then eventually you become the VP, then eventually you become the divisional, the CMO or whatever that is. But what you're saying here, which I think is extremely logical, is that the progression of salespeople should not be to sales management per se.
It really shouldn't. Here's the thing that cracks me up about the contracting industry. And I want you to compare it to any other sales organization, medical device sales, technology. I come from mortgages and finance. A salesperson has a career path, right? Yeah. The place I came from, you go to senior banker and then executive, then president's club.
Yeah, sure.
When you're in your 5th year, not only do you get a raise for hitting goal consistently for 8 quarters in a row, but you have a cool new job title, right? And then you can sit.
You do.
In the contracting industry, we got 2 roles. You either do the same thing every single day with no job title upgrade, nothing you're fighting toward, no big thing other than whatever you put on your scoreboard, or you could be the sales manager. And I think it shortchanges both the profession of salesperson and the idea and the skill set required to be an effective sales manager.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting point. So what can companies do better? Like how do you help, and what are maybe some tips and tricks that an organization could do that would really improve the throughput? Because it's all about closing those deals and getting more business in the end.
It's even before that. Like Ryan, I'm stealing your words because I've been doing that for the past year, but we help them build a vision, right? We help them build a vision of what do we want the company to look like, and what do we want it to look like for the individuals? And then we walk backwards. We apply numbers to it. We figure out what are the milestones, the key performance indicators required. And then that's great. That's at the company level. Now what we do, and I love that we do this, we will fly out to sales organizations to sit down with them for 2 days. And what we do over a couple of weeks with the sales leader, we do over 2 days with the salesperson. We learn their personal goals, their 10-year, their 3-year, their 1-year plan, the kinds of hopes and dreams they're trying to accomplish. And what I love about this, guys, I have not yet met a salesperson who is, after having that conversation about what they want to do, I've not once seen a salesperson set a goal for themselves that is lower than the company goal. It hasn't happened. I don't believe it will. Right.
It's very interesting. Yeah. Leave them to their own devices and
Yeah.
and listen, let's just be honest. I mean, I was a sales guy in my early career. I mean, we get egos,
Yeah.
and when I was with AT&T for a few years, and I was the number one sales rep in the country. It's not like I brag about something that happened 25 years ago, but I was number one. So it's really true, right? Yeah. It's like we put all of the awards in the background because that is part of what drives our ego. And I think it's just, management in the end, when you really get down to it, your job as a leader is to enable your people and to remove barriers from them. And you can't do that when you've got the responsibility of doing all the sales yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you're doing, it's that old Pareto principle, the 80-20, right? When 80% of the sales are still coming from that sales manager, you've got what you have as a salesperson. You need a real leader that comes in there and girds them up and helps them. How about some tips and tricks that maybe people can do, today that they can sort of put into action? And I'd love for them to reach out to you if they need that type of help in their organization. But if you're the guy that's in just the truck and it's you and your two partners, driving around, how do you get better at this?
Yeah, I'll start. Now, I'd just say carve out time to look at your numbers and put it in a CRM.
Yeah.
There's really easy to install CRMs that start, you can get a pipe drive or
simple,
job service or a roofing system and look at the numbers, because there's going to be no funner time and easier way to make a lot of sales when you're the owner of a company that represents your own company with your own shirt and you're talking to homeowners about working with you. It's going to be easier to make sales. So easy because, you have that status, that ability to where the buck stops here. And what I would do is I would do exactly what Joe said. Set goals. Say, all right, partner, let's bring our wives together. Let's have a dinner and say, all right, honeys. Or if you're a woman owner, say, all right, husband.
Yeah.
Where do we want to be? What do we want this to look like? How much money do we really want to make? What are we trying to accomplish? I know we got the house in this part of town. We really want the couple acres with a little bit more space. You're pregnant, or we're about to have our first baby. Like, let's make a plan. What do we really want to do? Because at the end of the day, owners are just salespeople with goals that just have maybe a little easier vehicle to get there, but there's more risk.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. So I would start there because that's going to really help us prioritize.
Set some goals for yourself. Yeah. Because if you don't, I love, there's this old Bruce Lee quote that says goals are not meant to be attained. They're just something to aim at. Like just getting started. It's like just saying north is the direction. We're going that direction. Versus just wandering around out in the desert trying to figure it out.
Yeah. And I'll say one more thing, Joe, just quickly. I know we're running short on time, but I'd say another one that's really important is get a sales process that you can believe in. We at SCG, we implement a sales process. It's called baseline selling. It uses a baseball diamond to help you navigate where you are in the sales process with cool milestones. And I can tell you right now, we teach the most green to the most experienced, the most masterful relationship guys or girls in the industry to use the same system. And what that does is it keeps people on the same page. It's not like everybody's singing their own song and their own thing, their own song sheet. Everybody's in the same playbook and everybody knows what was what. And that vocabulary creates a sense of built-in accountability and awareness to navigate deals, to say, hey, where did I go wrong? Where did the wheels fall off on that one? And then it's like, now guys are coaching themselves on how to get better. And that right there is, if people did 40% of what Joe and I just said, they were going to see a big increase in their business.
Yeah. Joe, how about you? What advice would you give?
You mentioned something earlier too about I think we all touched on it, being that encouraging person for our teammates, helping them achieve their goals. Yeah. And I got to tell you, if you run a sales team and you've got multiple people on your team, pull over before you do this if you're in your truck, but pull up your calendar, go to 8:30 p.m. and set yourself a reminder to prop somebody out. And as a sales leader, I always thought I was super positive, right? You could tell I'm very low energy, very quiet. I don't get excited often.
Likewise.
I'm known for the woo clap, right? Me and the nature boy get along. So I always thought I was a super positive, engaging leader. Well, I got some feedback from one of my teammates saying, you keep talking about Dan, you keep talking about Jen. There's 14 people on this team.
Yeah.
And one, creating a culture of feedback is very important. We'll get to that later. But it was great feedback. I said, you know what? All right, from now on, it's somebody different every single day. Somebody will hear from me every single day. And what I love doing is this little text message at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. People are in their quiet moment, right? And then that text message comes through from the sales leader that says, hey, I noticed you knocked 100 doors today. Nice work. Or you called 14 people today. Nice work. Whatever the small thing that's a leading indicator is. It's got nothing to do with the dollar value of the project and everything to do with the effort put in. Find somebody else to talk to, put it in your calendar, do it consistently every single day. Because there might be 14 of them and there's one of you. And if you pay 2 compliments a day, that's only 2 out of 14. You got room to go.
Well, and I think we have to break down this conception of, well, that's their job. That's what I paid them to do. So just go freaking do it. Like, I hear executives say that and I'm like, that is not the way, you motivate people. It's not the way you lead. That's the way you manage. And there's a very big difference between that, right? Management and leadership. And I think what you're talking about there is really leading and leading by encouraging people and bringing them along, helping them understand what they're doing well. And I think the interesting thing is this, I've found this too in leadership, that if I'm open in my communication regularly, even when I tell them something that's negative, they don't see it as negative. They see it as encouragement. Like they see it as like, oh, he's trying to help me get to the next level because he's regularly telling me I'm doing a good job. So when he does see me fall a little bit, it isn't like he's just pointing out my faults. He's usually pointing out all the good things, and when he does bring up these things, it's because he's looking out for me, and you just have to create, when the only communication that comes from the top is negative, anytime that they see your phone number, they go, oh shit, here we go. Right. No, we don't want that. We want them to think, hey, this must be a good thing. And then when they hear it and they go, well, that wasn't exactly good, but oh, well, it felt pretty good. So I think those are really great pieces of advice.
And there's another extreme to that, Derrick, is those that would, want to be your friends so much that they fail to hold you accountable. The ruinous empathy type. You've got that aggressive, obnoxious side, and you got the, I like you too much to tell you what you're doing wrong side, in which case I let you down. And it's another thing too. Leaders, a lot of us, we have some windshield time. There's a great book called Radical Candor that absolutely changed my career as a sales leader. I very much vacillated between being a little bit too empathetic with things I shouldn't have been empathetic with. And then when I had to lay it down, I laid it down hard. I was a jerk.
Yeah, I was too for a long time. That was a great book.
It's a really good book. And taking that and applying it and living inside of that radical candor space consistently as a sales leader, and then consistently coaching, and then consistently holding people accountable. That's the kind of thing that generates consistent results, which I'm pretty sure we want a lot of.
That's sort of what we're looking for. We don't want a symmetry in our revenue. We want to get that thing leveled out and then start to tilt it up. Right? Yeah. Ryan, tell everybody how they find out more about what you all do.
Yeah, thank you. So you can join us on our podcast. Just a plug for ours. It's called Growth Minded Contractor. We are entering into season 2. You can go to our website, salestransformationgroup.com. So we're the platform. We are the number one sales and coaching platform for the industry. We're really proud of our efforts there, and guys like Joe and other teammates of ours that work hard every day to make an impact. But yeah, you can take a look at some of our programs. We love working with commercial roofing contractors, service departments, sales departments. We love working with roofing contractors that are in the insurance realm, where they're doing door-to-door. It's a lot of storm activity. We love retail contractors who are trying to grow their local brand and have homeowners pay with their money or financing. We love them. And we have different events. If anybody's interested to check us out, we have a bigger one in September called the Transform Conference, in which Sarah Weiss is speaking on a panel, and she's going to have an opportunity for everybody to hear who she's all about, and she's amazing. And we also have things like the Sales Athlete Takeover, Service Con. We have the Maui event, the Sales Leader Intensive in Maui. So we have a bunch of little events that are kind of easy to get into and easy to get to, except Maui, that's a little harder to get to. Unless you
but it's a destination, right? I mean, you're not going to just fly in and fly out to Maui.
Yeah, so that'll be at least 3 days on that one. So it's fun. We just love creating opportunities to build connection and then do some work with us. So
that's awesome. Well, thank you both for being here, and thank you all for joining us on another edition of Roof Talk. Make sure you check these guys out. This is really good information to help you grow your business.